All right, today we're going to talk about the fight or flight response and how it relates to panic and anxiety. When it comes to making changes in your life, you're the expert. You are in the driver's seat. Everything else is just a guide. Welcome to Injoyness podcast, your guide to wellness, recovery, and change. I'm your host, Dela Fotoohi, and thank you for joining me on this episode. I'd like to talk about what happens in our body when we feel anxious or panicked. Have you ever heard of fight or flight response before? The fight or flight response is a natural reaction that our body has to perceive danger. It's something we all have, and it's actually designed to keep us safe, believe it or not. Imagine you're in a situation where there's this real threat, like a wild animal. Your body automatically kicks into survival mode. Your heart races, your breathing speeds up, and your muscles tense. These changes prepare you to either fight the threat or run away from it. That's the fight or flight response in action. This response is really helpful when there's an actual danger, but sometimes our body reacts the same way to situations that aren't actually dangerous. This can happen with anxiety or panic attacks. Our brain senses a threat even if it's not real, like a fire alarm going off when there's no actual fire. The brain doesn't know the difference, so it triggers the fight or flight response just as if it was a real life-threatening situation. When that happens, you might notice symptoms like racing thoughts, difficulty breathing, or feeling dizzy. Those are all part of your body's attempts to protect you. But since the threat isn't real, those sensations can feel confusing and overwhelming. The key to managing this is recognizing that while your body is reacting as if there is a danger, you're actually safe. The more we can understand this, the easier it becomes to respond differently. There are tools that we can use to help your brain and body settle down in those moments, like grounding techniques, breathing exercises, and challenging the catastrophic thoughts through an approach called CBT, Cognitive Behavior Therapy. So this was a foundation for understanding the fight or flight response, while knowing that this experience is really normal. It also opens the door to introducing coping strategies that can help you feel more in control during panic episodes. So now I'd like to walk you through what is happening in your brain when you feel panic, anxiety, or stress. Understanding this can help us make sense of those intense feelings and even learn to manage them better. There are two key parts in your brain that we're going to talk about: the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala, it's like the brain's alarm system. It's always on the lookout for danger. And when it thinks something is a threat, it quickly sounds the alarm. This happens really fast before you even have time to think about it. When the amygdala senses danger, it sends signals that flood your body with stress hormones like adrenaline. That's what gets your heart racing, makes your breathing shallow, and gets you ready to fight, run away, or freeze. This is super helpful if there's a real threat, like being in actual danger. But here's where things can get tricky. The amygdala sometimes sounds the alarm even when there's no real danger, like when you're in a safe place but hear a loud noise, like a false fire alarm, or when you just feel overwhelmed by stress. Your brain and body still react as if there's a major threat, which is why panic and anxiety can feel so intense. Now, the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, usually helps you evaluate what's really going on. It's responsible for logic and reasoning. But when the amygdala goes into overdrive, it sort of hijacks the system, and the prefrontal cortex can get overwhelmed. That's why it can be hard to think clearly or calm yourself down in those moments. The good news is that when you work with a therapist, they can help you strengthen that connection between your prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Techniques like deep breathing, grounding exercises, and cognitive strategies help your brain recognize that you're safe, so the amygdala can stand down and let the logical part of your brain take over again. So the next time you start to feel panicked or anxious, remember, it's your brain trying to protect you, even if there's no real danger. With practice, you can train your brain to recognize what's really happening and calm down quicker. I hope this information helped you simplify brain functions while remaining accurate, helping you understand what drives your panic and how you can begin to manage it. All right, if you're feeling really anxious, you can try a grounding exercise that might help bring you back into the present moment. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 exercise. Are you ready? Let's try it together. Okay, let's start with 5 things you can see. Look around the room or wherever you are and name 5 things you can see right now. Take your time. Great job. Now let's move on to 4 things you can feel. These things could be things like the texture of your clothes, the floor under your feet, or even the temperature of the air around you. Now name 4 things you can feel. It helps if you can name the sensation, like the floor under your feet feels hard or soft, or the temperature of the air on your skin feels warm or cold. Perfect. Now let's find 3 things you can hear. Listen closely. It could be something subtle like a clock ticking or a distant sound outside, or the humming of your computer. What are 3 sounds you can hear right now? You're doing really well. Now let's move on to 2 things you can smell. If you don't notice any strong smells right now, think about 2 smells you like, or that you feel good thinking about them, like fresh coffee, or rain, or a wet dog. Can you name 2 smells? Good. Last but not least, focus on 1 thing you can taste. If you're not currently tasting anything, maybe just notice the taste in your mouth. Or think about a taste you enjoy. For me, that's coffee. What's one taste you can focus on? Great work. How are you feeling now? Hopefully, this helps to bring you back into the present moment and slow down those racing thoughts. Anytime you start to feel overwhelmed, you can use this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise to ground yourself. Your senses are always available to you, anytime, anywhere. I hope this exercise helped you with understanding how calming language can help you shift your focus from anxious thoughts to your immediate surroundings, aka the present moment. I wish you the very best. Take care. I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Injoyness podcast, a guide in your journey to wellness, recovery, and change. In gratitude and love, I'm your host, Dela.